Hey everybody, I have a video here for you today. As I do a lot of days, I like to turn on my computer, look at comments, questions, messages, and if there's some common themes, instead of writing those people and answering them, I just like to make a video instead. It's a lot easier for me these days. This is getting easier for me to do just because I'm getting used to it, and I don't mind taking a few minutes to express my opinions, even though I don't have a lot of time for YouTube these days. I got a lot of other things on my mind. But this is something that I like to do, and expressing my opinion, and especially when it deals with some kind of controversial subjects, and I can kind of put an answer on why they aren't so controversial to me. And one common theme is, why do I think the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx are thousands of years older than the standard model of history? And that's an excellent question, and I have specific reasons why, and I think I'll just go over a few of those today. And I mentioned Gurdjieff in a previous video from a few days ago, and I just find him very interesting. He seemed to be a very knowledgeable and did some great research and had some fascinating things to express. And he claimed that he found a map of pre-sand Egypt, and he said he saw the Sphinx on it, and he was so intrigued by what he saw, he had to make an immediate trip to the Giza Plateau. I'm just wondering, did he see the Sphinx in a form that wasn't familiar to the people of that time? Is that why he had to make the immediate trip? And in Gurdjieff's time, did they know Egypt was pre-sand at one time? Was that information even available to Gurdjieff? That is something I have not looked into. Also, we have pre-dynastic tombs, obviously built on the Giza Plateau. Some of these, the materials for those tombs were used in later tombs, and they're clearly pre-dynastic. Did they just build these tombs around this area in anticipation of a couple thousand years later the Great Pyramids and the Sphinx were to be built at the same location? That seems a little bit ludicrous to me. And also, the Great Pyramid, lacking any inscription or cartouche or life story or anything that we see in tombs familiar with the time period. If this egomaniac pharaoh, Khufu, would have built the greatest structure on earth, he would have made sure for all of eternity that his name would have been associated with this monument. Instead, what do we have? We have nothing except a hazy glyph from a chamber that never should have been found. That story, that Khufu built the Great Pyramid, is absolutely ridiculous to me. Also, I wanted to look into, what do we know from the time of Khafre and Khufu? Well, it seems their priests say that these structures were built by the gods. And I know Michael Shermer, I believe that's the guy's name, who had the debate with Graham Hancock. He gives Graham Hancock some shit about his work that is only reserved for a small mind, and he even gave him crap about his title, Magicians of the Gods. Well, here is a story from the 4th Dynasty, Tales of the Magicians. I just wanted to point that out. And what does it actually say about the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid from the time of Khufu? I really went in through the ancient text and really looked at what it exactly said and what it appears to say. And it seems to say the Sphinx, what we call the Sphinx today, and the Great Pyramids were closed, not built. They were closed in the time of Khufu in Khafre. I just think that's important to mention. But I think one of the greatest proofs that the Sphinx was already ancient in the time of Khafre, who they say's face is on the Sphinx, which John Anthony West has shown that to be pretty ridiculous. But I think the restoration stones themselves tell a great story and is proof that the Sphinx was already ancient in the time of Khafre. And we know that the Sphinx was restored and repaired a few times in history. The Old Kingdom, the New Kingdom. Thutmose IV tells a story when the Sphinx was buried probably up to about this region, where Prince Thutmose takes a nap under the chin of the Sphinx, and he has a dream, and that's detailed in the dream stela right here. He has a dream where he fell asleep, and the great god talked to him under a burning midday sun, where he says, Thutmose, I am your father, gives him instructions. Thutmose inscribes them on a dream stela, but he says they are inscribed by the finger of Thoth himself. Wait a minute, where have I heard that story? Anyway, getting back to the subject here. Obviously, the Sphinx buried up to its neck, most of its history. All the erosion is done on the body, not the face. Telling us the story that we've been told is pure crap. Now, the restoration stones. Roman times, beginning of the 20th century, it was repaired. Old Kingdom, New Kingdom. But those Old Kingdom stones that Mark Lehner, Egyptologist, even acknowledges are Old Kingdom stones, and then he puts out a story that they were just cannibalized and put here. But where are those Old Kingdom restoration stones? They are in the weathered grooves of the Sphinx. The Old Kingdom stones from the 4th dynasty are placed in the weathered erosion grooves of the Sphinx, proving the Sphinx was already old, very ancient, and eroded at the time of the 4th dynasty. Now in this video, I wanted to bring you down to the Sphinx itself on the Giza Plateau, and this is Mr. John Anthony West talking about this very subject of the Old Kingdom stones. And this comes from Carlos's channel here, and I know I have a lot of new subscribers, and I will leave a link for Carlos's channel. He has hours and hours and hours of John Anthony West at some of the most famous sites in Egypt. Please subscribe to Carlos's channel. There's some great stuff here, and he has given me permission just to use some brief clips from some of his videos. So this is John Anthony West talking at the Sphinx about the very subject of the Old Kingdom stones and where they are placed. I hope you thought this video was interesting, and you all have a very nice day.
Once and for all, and see if we can get this water weathering question solved once and for all. But so that's still hanging fire. But just to give you a few of the points here, you see when you look, you see the different repair blocks, you see the different repair campaigns, and you recognize instantly that they're very different from each other. This is all modern stuff. Up there is not that modern. In fact, the rough stuff over there is still older. And the very bottom, the thing that curls around, that's typical of Old Kingdom masonry. And John will corroborate this. Where's architect John? John. In architectural history, right, when you see two different styles employed in the same building, you know pretty much for sure that you have two different periods of a building. I mean, roughly speaking, if you have a Victorian house and you've got a kitchen designed by IKEA, anybody knows that you don't go there and say, wow, they had a Victorian IKEA. You know that somebody repaired the kitchen. So when you see different styles, and the archaeologists themselves agree with us, Lehner, Mark Lehner, the Royal Acquisition, who I know fairly well. He's got to come up, he's coming. But he's done very careful work and misinterpreted his own findings, which is weird. But he acknowledges that the earliest repair block, that the Sphinx was already weathered into its present condition when the first repair blocks were applied. Now the Sphinx is supposedly built by the pharaoh Khafra around 2400, carved around 2400 BC. So that's the Old Kingdom. More on this too. Don't get impatient. Somewhere along the line, things will get covered. And if you have a question, by the way, just chime in with it. I don't mind getting interrupted. I find my way back. So don't worry, really seriously, because and then you forget, or hold the question and remember it, write it down. So Lehner acknowledges that the oldest repair blocks are typical of Old Kingdom masonry. But then he said, well, they've been cannibalized from, they're really done later in the New Kingdom, about 1,000 years later, but they've been cannibalized from earlier structures. This is impossible, as a matter of fact, because they're all form-fit to fit into the grooves, into the weathered grooves of the Sphinx itself.